Lesson 5 is a promise of holiness, and this takes us to the Mosaic covenant. Of course, it's now we're moving from God's covenants with individuals, and it's taking on a national scale. The Mosaic covenant is actually a covenant with Israel as a nation. And again, this lesson is just introductory. We're going to take a few lessons here coming up later on in the quarterly, coming back, and we're going to look at the law specifically in the details about the law, because that's going to be really important for the next quarterly as we try to understand the relationship between the Old and New Covenants. But this is kind of an introduction to the Mosaic Law. And key to this is the recognition that the covenant itself is that those 10 Commandments given at Sinai, right there when they reach the mountain, and God speaks to Israel the 10 words or the 10 Commandments. And this is actually referred to as the covenant. It's the center, you might say. Everything flows from that encounter where God speaks to Israel. Even before it's written down, he speaks directly to Israel. But the key to this lesson is we want to see how what God says here, particularly at the beginning, is very similar to God's relationship with Abraham, and that these commandments are not given in a vacuum, but as the preamble of the 10 Commandments indicate, that Israel is a people that have inherited the covenant of Abraham. They are on their way to the promised land, having been delivered from bondage, so that God could keep his promises to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And so this Exodus, this promise of a land, this is the background for the Mosaic covenant. Some would look at the Mosaic covenant as just legalistic and law, but that's not at all how it's framed in the 10 Commandments. It begins, I'm the God who brought you out. He says the same thing to Abraham. I'm the God that brought you out. In other words, the whole idea of thou shalt not obey me is in the context of what God has already done. He's already brought them, he says, on eagle's wings out of bondage. And so they've experienced redemption. We see earlier that they've experienced a faith response to God's redemption in Egypt and in crossing the Red Sea. And even right there at Sinai, God talks about faith. I want you to believe my servant Moses and what he's going to tell you. And so the 10 Commandments in this Mosaic covenant is really the Abrahamic covenant writ large for a whole nation. God had promised Abraham that he was going to make a great nation of them and give them a land. And that's actually happening now. And so what we want to see, again, is this continuity of this covenant story and the progressive nature. The scale is now larger. God's dealing with a nation that's about to go in to the land and become a nation. And so we need to understand the Mosaic covenant in that context. And so that's what this lesson explores.